Aloha, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So this year we decided to do something a little different with the program planning, and that was to have what we call a deep dive session. We wanted to give our participants, our audience, as well as our speakers an opportunity to take a deeper dive alongside what's happening in the general session. And I have to tell you, this was highly successful. We were wondering if this was going to make a difference to the audience and if the audience was going to feel that they were being divided between the main auditorium and the deep dive. And we had set, because of the room we had chosen for the deep dive, we'd set the audience participation at 40. We ended up having all 40 seats covered within days of us putting out this deep dive registration opportunity, and we actually ended up reconfiguring the room so we could put more people in there. So this particular deep dive, we talked about time of use rates and so forth, and it's my privilege to introduce two of the three speakers who were, or leaders of that deep dive. Jeremy couldn't be with us today, Jeremy from Hawaiian Electric, but we're very pleased to have Dr. Ahmad Faruqui and Jen Parter, and I'm going to let them say a few words. Please start sending your questions up if you have any. And I also should announce that Dr. Faruqui and Jen and Jeremy were so pleased with the outcomes of the deep dive session that we will be giving you an opportunity in a few weeks for a webinar for those of you who didn't, or even those of you who did participate in the deep dive, to have an opportunity to hear Dr. Faruqui and Jen and Jeremy again. So with that, I'm going to let you decide who's taking the lead.
She's going first.
I'm going first. So my name is Jenny Potter. I'm a faculty energy specialist with the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute. I've been here in Hawaii working on energy issues over the last decade and love what we're doing and the progress that we're making in the state. And there's a ton of issues that we've been tackling, and time of use is one of them. There has been a decision and order that was filed yesterday regarding time of use that has sort of set the tone for our discussion yesterday, and I'll dig into that a little bit. But I want to begin by starting to talk, giving you my perspective on time of use and what it is and what it means, what it's intended to do. Time of use is a mechanism sending price signals to customers to change their behavior around their energy usage in response to be cost reflective to system needs. So where the time is, it's very time dependent upon when energy is more costly is when you charge a higher rate to customers, and when it's less costly, you charge a reduced rate. And so time of use has been very effective across the country in providing savings to customers as well as providing system benefits. And so we, in Hawaii, a couple of years ago, started our own journey with time of use rates and implemented a pilot with Hawaiian Electric and about 14,000 customers that participated in this pilot to examine a time of use rate where the commission had set a framework and they implemented based on that framework. That was the discussion that Jeremy provided during the panel yesterday, discussing the outcomes of the pilot. There was a modest reduction in consumption across the peak period, but there was not any indication of a time shift. And so he shared with us, the methods for communicating with customers, the marketing, and ultimately the outcomes of that pilot. Dr. Faruqui shared some insights from across the country around time of use rates and sort of the landscape, if you will. There's about 10% of customers on time of use rates across the country, and there's about 80% of people that have AMI meters or advanced metering, so that enables advanced rates to be effective. And Dr. Faruqui also pointed out, that opt-in and opt-out are the frameworks which we implement time of use rates, where opt-in is where customers self-select into being in a time of use program, where opt-out, they're put on the program and they have the opportunity to opt out back to a standard tariff. And typically typically what we see in the United States is an opt-in tariff or an opt-in strategy to implementation. Furthermore, Dr. Faruqui identified, that with technology, enabling technology that helps automate a response to time of use rates, there is a significantly greater decrease in energy consumption over a time of use period. And that was resounding across almost 400 pilots that was demonstrated in his research that he's conducted. And my pilot and my study that I explained was a study that was conducted by H&EI that looked at the system benefits of time of use load shifting on the system, in particular in Oahu. And what is so significant is the time between when we issued the decision on time of use rates at the commission and that framework and today, the system that we have today. There's been a difference in how time of use is able to impact the system. And what I mean by that is we've deployed so many batteries across the system with these solar and storage systems as well as standalone storage systems that they've literally saturated the market in terms of load shifting benefits. And that's crowded out the ability for time of use to have a significant impact on fuel savings in Oahu on that system. So this is pretty remarkable when you think in just a few years how we've literally changed the landscape of the system by adding this saturation of batteries, and how now we need to be thinking about time of use rates that can respond to low solar days where there's not significant solar production because we are actually energy constrained now and not capacity constrained. So all of our presentations highlighted different points of time of use and really how we can move forward into a place where time of use rates in Hawaii have an impact on both the system, on affordability, on equity, and really how to utilize technology to maximize the benefits of time of use within our space. So that was one thing that we asked the audience to do, or our participants. They weren't really an audience. This was an active dialogue, which we had with all of the participants. We had about 25 minutes of conversation, if not more. One of the questions that we asked them was about this sense of urgency that they had around time of use rates in Hawaii. And we asked them on a scale of 1 to 5, how many people felt, with 1 being no need at all and 5 being absolutely urgent, how many felt the time of use rates for the residential class was an urgent need. And most of 50% of the people responded that there's no need at all at this time for it to be an urgent priority, given all the pressing issues around energy in the state. And about 50% of the group felt that it was somewhere in between, but none had escalated it to, this is a most pressing priority and it needs to be effective now. And a similar case for commercial customers, there was an overwhelming, about a 2/3 response that it really wasn't necessary at this time to address time of use rates in that space. So our audience wasn't prioritizing time of use, but they all showed up to have a conversation around how it can best benefit ratepayers within the state. And so trying to formulate a strategy forward is really important, and in particular given the PUC ruling that was issued yesterday, which effectively closed the advanced rate design TOU track in the DER docket. So it literally said, we're not going to pursue this any further in this docket, and we're going to allow the rates to stay open so that customers can be on it, but we're not going to try and make modifications to the rate design at this time. We'll take this up in another proceeding when we can enable advanced technologies along with rate design and further explore it in that space. So there's almost an ending to the time of use rates as we know them now, and this opportunity to continue the dialogue and exploring how time of use rates can be effective in Hawaii moving forward with enabling technology, with equity in center of the mind, with affordability and built into the structure of those rates. So, and also addressing the grid needs, which is so important because these rates should be cost reflective of system need. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Faruqui to say some words as well.
Thank you very much. I think the PUC decision is very unfortunate because you can't close the door on what's going to happen tomorrow. Let me back up that statement, which is obviously a very strong statement, by giving you some perspective on time of use pricing as it is viewed globally, not just in the United States, but across the globe. The time of use rates are the future. The future has arrived. It is knocking on the door, whether we are in Hawaii or California or Australia or Norway. Why is that? Well, because of two major factors, and there's a third prerequisite. Let me begin with the prerequisite. You cannot do time of use rates without smart digital meters. That is a prerequisite. As was mentioned, 80% of the customers in the US have smart meters. Only 10% are on time of use rates. So there's a huge opportunity for growth. You may ask, why would you ever want to do something as complex and possibly totalitarian, maybe socialistic as time of use rates? It comes across as Orwellian. Why are you telling me when to do my cooking or my dishwashing, et cetera, et cetera? Well, let's step back from that confrontation and think for a moment about the inequity that we have today with the flat rates that everybody has. The flat rates force a customer who's not using much during the peak period to pay more than they should be paying. It's unfair to half of the customers to have flat rates. The other half are using a lot of energy during the peak period, but they are being charged less because they're on a flat rate. So the unspoken reality, the truth about the flat rates, is they are the most inequitable rate design in history. They are creating a transfer of wealth from those customers who are less peaky intensive to those who are more peaky intensive. When you move to time of use rates, you eliminate that major inequity. It is the untold story that people did not get into yesterday in the deep dive, and there was no time for me to bring it up. It is also forgotten in many of the debates I have participated in Canada, the US, and elsewhere. Flat rates are inequitable. You cannot endorse through a PUC order inequity by saying we will not move to smart time of use rates. Again, that's my personal opinion. I am an independent now, don't work for any entity, so I can say what I want to as an economist with 45 years of experience. The second comment I'll make is the efficiency aspect of time of use rates. For those customers who are able to shift their load from peak to off-peak, and the peak window here is in the late afternoon, evening hours. We have the same thing in California where I live. The peak period there is 4 to 9 p.m. I believe here it's 5 to 9 p.m. or 5 to 8 or something like that. Yeah, so everyone's now looking at peak periods that have shifted because of the so-called duck curve, right? The shifting of the curve has occurred. That's true throughout the globe now. And so what you do is you set your dishwasher, you load it up after dinner, but it begins to charge at midnight if that's when your off-peak period begins. It's very convenient. There is no hardship. If you have an electric car, and more people are getting them, even here I'm seeing electric cars. If we continue with the EV revolution, like we have with the PV revolution, where Hawaii is the national leader, at some point I will see more EVs here. You can easily charge your car, not during the peak hours, but during the off-peak hours, the nighttime hours or the early morning hours, or maybe even in the afternoon where the sunshine is ample. In Australia, in South Australia, more than 40% of all customers, including apartments and single-family homes, now have solar panels, the highest anywhere that I have seen. Well, so those customers get a sponge tariff. Their time of use rates, like yours in Hawaii, has the lowest rates during the daytime hours when the sun is shining. And so you can charge your car during those hours. You can also run your laundry, your dishwasher, et cetera, during those periods. So there are a lot of efficiency opportunities which right now are not evident in the pilot that Hawaiian Electric ran. We don't have those technologies today in large numbers. And so maybe the load shifting that we have seen, like in Sacramento, where Jenny Potter designed and ran one of the best pilots, not just in the US, but globally. And by the way, I had nothing to do with it, so I can't take any credit for it. But it is really the gold standard of how pilots should be designed and run. And in some ways, that was reflected in the Hawaiian Electric pilot. Well, why are the results so different? Why did we see so much load shifting in Sacramento and so little load shifting in Hawaii? Well, because air conditioning is the main driver of load shifting today. If you have a smart thermostat, you have an air conditioner, you can shift a lot of load with just a minimum amount of discomfort and save a lot of money. Even in Oklahoma, they are doing that. Oklahoma is really hot and humid and actually miserable in the summer, but they have 10% of their customers on time of use rates. Arizona, which has more than 100 days above 100 degrees, just imagine. They call it the planet of the sun when you go to Arizona. They have somewhere between 30 to 60% of the customers on optional opt-in time of use rates. They're not forced onto those rates. They are themselves opting into those rates. So my recommendation for the lovely state of Hawaii, which I've visited numerous times since 1992 and love the tropical temperatures you have, is leave the door open, don't close the door. The sun is shining, you have solar panels, you have all kinds of new technologies coming. Let customers who find those rates attractive sign on to those rates. They will lower their bills. What's wrong with people finally having the equitable opportunity to lower their rates? They have been overpaying. Let's not overlook and hide the problems with flat rates. That's what this order does, in my personal opinion. So with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Great, thank you very much. So we do have a couple of questions that have come in. Jenny, we have one question asking what do you mean by energy constraint versus capacity constraint on days with limited solar? How would that work?
Yes, that's a great question. So what happens is we install all this capacity and solar panels. So we'll install, a system that has 100 megawatts. And so that capacity during the middle of the day is producing energy. But when there's no sun that's shining, when the sun it's a low solar day, that means that it's no longer producing that energy. And so you have the installed capacity on the system, so all of that capacity should be available for use, but it's not producing the energy that it should be because of a low solar day. And that has changed fundamentally how we look at our system, because now with all the solar and storage that's going online, it's literally reducing the unserved energy risk that's happening in the peak hours of the evening, and now spreading it out throughout the day for low solar days. And so you're seeing this now more evenly distributed, the risk for unserved energy more evenly distributed, because it's an energy constrained system now and not a capacity constraint. I hope that answers the question.
Great, thank you very much. And so one of the things that happens as we're planning the energy conference is technology, policies, philosophies are changing. And one of the questions that has come up about TOU is how it is actually impacted and how we looked at TOU initially. So Dr. Faruqui, you already started talking about how we have to reconsider TOU, and we've got a couple of questions related to the impact and reconsideration of TOU. The first one is, have TOU rates been explored with respect to commercial and industrial loads, especially those businesses that have 2 or 3 or 24-hour shifts of people working and so forth? So the load is still there regardless of what time of day. And how is that integrated into the considerations of TOU?
So each customer is unique and different, depends on their load profile, residential, commercial. Even within residential, there is so much variation. It's a lifestyle issue. It's a comfort level issue. People are willing to make different trade-offs. It's very important to base the time of use period on a cost of service study that shows which hours are more expensive, which hours are less expensive for the grid, and communicate that fact to the customer. Some will shift load, some will not shift load, but the secret to success is to market it correctly, like we saw in Sacramento, like we saw in Oklahoma, like we're seeing in Arizona. Not everybody is going to take it, but those who take it will benefit from it either because their load shape is not an expensive load shape to serve, and they will lower their bill without doing any changes to their lifestyle, or because they have technologies or a behavioral lifestyle that is flexible. So we have to allow for diversity across customers. There is no doubt, across climates, and we just have to learn by doing. But not doing is basically not learning. We cannot close the door on progress.
Great, thank you. So that pretty much answers this next question too, which has to do with the increased number of people working from home and TOU. Do either of you have any comments regarded to that, as far as, how do those individuals participate in a TOU program?
Yeah, so suppose somebody's working from home, or they're retired like me, or they don't need a job, whatever. They're at home. And so let's suppose they have an electric car. Well, great. So charge your car in the daytime when the rates are low and the sun is shining. I mean, unless you're driving, you can charge it during the daytime. So that's the easiest load. And then, of course, if the rates are low during the daytime, as they are in the Hawaiian context, run your dishwasher in the daytime, run your laundry in the daytime, and do all your computer work in the daytime. Watch an occasional TV show if you have time for that. So just flip the load shape. Basically, COVID changed our reality, and a lot of commercial buildings are now vacant because all the people are working from home. Well, that's great because they are happy, their commute time has been saved, and the issue that arises is, well, I want to be comfortable at home. I want my air conditioner running. Well, interestingly, in Hawaii, that's not a big issue because you have a tropical climate, and that is why we cannot rely on that air conditioner shift as a source of load shifting benefits from time of use. You have mostly room air conditioners, and a lot of those, if you want, you can pre-cool, which people do, and just drop it by a few degrees and then raise it by a few degrees. And if it becomes uncomfortable, then just readjust it. I mean, that's what I do at home. I mean, some days are really hot and uncomfortable. I live in the East Bay Area, 80s and 90s, and my wife and I are empty nesters. So we have set it at 73 degrees, which if it becomes uncomfortable, I drop it down to 70 degrees. So on some days, I'm not shifting as much load as I can on other days. And you could say you're a convert, you're an ideologue, you live a nerd's life. Well, no, I have many friends and relatives who are living normal lives. They're doing exactly those things. The Nest thermostat and devices like that have enabled us to do what we couldn't do a few years ago. So feel free to add your perspective.
Yeah, I think basically what you said, the people that work from home are actually the ones that would benefit from the time of use rate because they are able to consume so much of their energy during the middle of the day. And then those evening hours, if they could cook dinner at 3 o'clock and then work through 6, there's options for them to take advantage of the fact that they're at home during the low cost hours. So I think those are the folks that definitely benefit.
Great. So Jenny, this question is for you. The individual is asking, TOU shifting with a battery is more costly than TOU shifting through load shifting. Why do you feel this was not reflected in the pilot program we did here in Hawaii?
So batteries are more expensive, and that was one of the arguments I made with my boss, Rick Rushlow. when I came on, I said time of use rates are a cost-effective way to implement load shifting, but the problem is batteries are showing up anyway, and they're showing up at the utility scale, and they're showing up at in the standalone storage. So it's challenging because yes, this is a more cost-effective way to do it. I think what happened during the time of use pilot that was run here is there was not as many DER customers on that pilot, and what we saw is those folks that did enroll in it actually they were made out worse. They actually lost money on the rate and subsequently left the pilot. So the effect that you could have had by arbitraging it didn't seem to occur. So I think that we just didn't see enough DER customers go on it. I also think that we need to be careful when we design rates to be more specific to what kind of customer we're targeting. If you have a customer that has an EV, they should have a specific rate. If you have a customer that has a PV system, they should have a specific rate. If you have one that has a battery and a PV system, they should have a special rate. I also think that low-income customers should have a special rate. So there needs to be more than just one time of use rate that's implemented when you have a successful pilot. And at SMUD, they had 8 different rates that they implemented for that pilot and that I was involved with. So it isn't a one-size-fits-all. And I think that if they would have had a rate that reflected DER plus BESS, then it would have been a very different outcome. So, but great question.
Great. So I'm going to combine a couple of these questions that came in. Folks are asking why you think people in Hawaii or customers in Hawaii did not shift their time of use during study. And is there data showing that TOU rate structures would lower overall rates for all ratepayers, including those that who are not able to shift behavior?
So initially, if time of use rates are broadly rolled out, then as I mentioned earlier, half of the customers will immediately see lower bills without doing any shifting at all. Whether it's Hawaii or Australia or Canada, that is a universal truth. The flat rates subsidize one group of customers at the expense of the other customers. Nobody talks about it because it is the status quo, and we think the status quo is the best. It is often not the best. It's just hidden from reality. Now, without smart meters, you would not see it, but with smart meters, you can see individual customer load shapes. You can compare them to the system load shape of Hawaiian Electric and see who is overpaying, who's underpaying. So offering time of use rates, even without load shifting, will be a benefit. Of course, then there comes the bigger issue. Well, why is the utility doing time of use rates? Why is the commission asking the utility to do time of use rates? Well, because they also can promote energy efficiency by lowering costs for the system as a whole. We need to, of course, educate and inform the customers on what technologies are easy to shift. We need to encourage people to use their water heaters with timers that charge them during the off-peak period. They invented that idea, if you can believe it, in good old Great Britain, which is no longer great, but it certainly had some good ideas. Even as far back as the 1950s, they had a tariff called Economy 7 tariff. And you could take it if you had either thermal energy storage or you had electric water heaters. That's the kind of thinking that guided the evolution of tariffs, not just in the UK, but also in France. France was also a global leader in time of use tariffs going as far back as the 1960s. So this is an idea that's been around for a long time. Customers on time of use rates love those rates. Unlike the 50% yesterday who supposedly didn't like them, because I think a lot of it is based on fear of the unknown. Once you do it, then you discover how good it is. Who doesn't like to have a lower bill? Would you please raise your hand if you would not like to have a lower bill? I'm not seeing any hands. I know the light is blinding me, but do you see any hands rising?
No hands.
Great, thank you. So we've got about 2.5 minutes left, and I'd like to give you opportunity to respond to these questions. The HECO trial perhaps is a revelation to the industry for Hawaii, and is there a reason for us to consider going backwards and keeping hope for TOU when perhaps there's a better solution such as rooftop plus battery? And that also leads to what were some of the other takeaways that your participants gave you yesterday? How did they react to the discussion? And if each of you could take a minute to answer.
Please.
Okay. So to the first question, I don't know if it would be going backwards. I think that's a judgment. And so I think that there's a path forward with time of use, but it needs to be reflective of the system needs moving forward, and also our affordability needs and equity needs within the state. So thinking about something as like what I mentioned earlier of a low solar day rate, this is something that they've actually used in France when they have weather events that trigger low production on their system, or they have an issue with a generator. They call an event to ask customers to reduce their load, and they charge them a high price during that day for energy that is consumed. And that could be an option for our customer base in Hawaii as something, but particularly if we could enable it with technology and do something like Ahmad is talking about, which is deploy control devices on hot water heaters, or having programmable thermostats that are able to respond to price signals. And so we automate some of the need for that load shift so people can be more successful. And I think that'll get to some of the equity issues that we see or have concerns with time of use rates, especially during those low solar days, is if you can automate those devices to actually trigger a shift in behavior and their behavior and their consumption, then that can help improve the affordability of the rate moving forward. I think one thing I'll just mention about the takeaways from our session that we had, there was definitely concerns about whether the pilot was successful and if it had done what it intended to do, and so there was a great deal of discussion around that, and also how technologies could help enable a more successful outcome for the pilot. And I think what we all agreed upon is that the pilot itself was a data point. It collected data, it collected information, and the response of customers. We asked them what they were doing. There was a host of information that was gathered during that process that is a data point that we have for making informed decisions moving forward. So it is by no means a failure or unsuccessful. It is absolutely a success because we gathered the information that we needed to move forward at this point. So I definitely think that was a big takeaway from the group. And actually, Commissioner Youst got up and talked to the group for about 5 minutes and sharing his concerns and ideas around what the decision and order meant. So that was a real opportunity for people to ask him questions and to really engage around what the next steps are for Hawaii with time of use rates.
Okay, and we're out of time, so if we could have you give a quick recap of your thoughts on this, Dr. Faruqui?
So one issue that in the negative time that we are in, the only comment I'll make is California has addressed the low-income affordability issue by having a 35% discount on the total bill for low-income customers, regardless of time of use. California has a high rate level problem, just like Hawaiian Electric does, and all of Hawaii does. So I was a bit surprised. I was told that there is no such program here. In California, they call it CARE, California Affordable Rates for Energy Program. That's something worth putting on the table and considering. It has nothing to do with time of use. It's just a rate level issue. Time of use rates, by the way, are not a panacea for all of the problems that affect us. So we need to look at other solutions for the issue of affordability. Time of use rates can help, but it'll be a small dent because you can't really save more than 5 to 10% on your energy bill with time of use rates. You have a bigger issue, you need a 35% discount or something in that order of magnitude. Many states in the US, by the way, have such programs. The discounts range from 10 to 20%. California has the highest percentage. So I'm surprised that Hawaii doesn't. So again, I learn something from every time I'm here, and Hawaii is a leader in many areas, and it can also learn from other states in other areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please join me in thanking Jenny and Dr. Faruqui. Mahalo.